Medgar Evers, a man greatly deserving of the Achievements in Rights Award due to his integrity, passion, and dedication for the cause of equal rights for African Americans. Evers strived for equality in his everyday life, whether it was drinking out of the same water fountain or even as great as learning in the same classroom. Unfortunately, this wasn't all that easy. Segregation was clearly shown not only in Mississippi but all over America. Fighting for equal rights for the Black Americans brought up many harsh consequences for Medgar Evers. With the vital help of the NAACP, he was able to achieve vast amounts of accomplishments for the greater good of Black Americans all over the United States. Born and raised in Decatur, Mississippi on July 2, 1925, the Mississippi he lived in was filled with blatant racism. Medgar Evers was introduced to life in a time where blacks were treated very unfairly by the white race. This was a place no one would dare protest, being that many race-related crimes occurred in Decatur. As a son of a farmer, life was hard enough as it was, and on top of that was the diversity that came all throughout his childhood. Medgar Evers spoke all about how life was as a child in Decatur, Mississippi. I graduated pretty quickly. When I was 11 or 12, a close friend of the family got lynched. I guess he was about 40 years old, married, and we used to play with his kids. I remember the Saturday night, a bunch of white men beat him to death at the Decatur Fairgrounds because he sassed back a white woman. They just left him dead on the ground. Everyone in town knew it, but never said a word in public. Just before I went into the army, I began wondering how long I could stand it. I used to watch Saturday night sport of white men trying to run down a Negro with their car, or white gangs coming through town to beat up a Negro. This is all that was needed to show the inequality of the people in Mississippi. Race-related crimes happened, and everyone was too scared to step up. The white supremacists had taken over and controlled everything, including schools, job, and social life. Unlike others, Medgar Evers was not afraid to take action. Evers was a native of Mississippi, living and studying in Decatur until he was drafted to the military in 1943. Nothing was different in the Army. Racism and segregation still existed between the soldiers, which only angered Evers more. Medgar was a part of World War II, fighting with his fellow Black Americans in Great Britain and France. Towards the end of the war, he and many Black veterans returned home to fight for change. After the long trip home, Evers and his fellow veterans' first step to freedom was to register to vote in a local Mississippi election. On election day, the Black veterans were forced away at gunpoint by two white men and were stripped from their opportunity to vote. Despite being filled with resentment, Evers continued to study at Alcorn State University to major in business. A few years later, Evers married his classmate Merle Beasley and moved to Mount Bayou, Mississippi. There, Howard, the president of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership, hires him as a car salesman. As a part of the RCNL, Evers helped organize boycotts of the service stations that denied blacks the use of the restrooms. The boycotters distributed bumper stickers with the slogan, "Don't buy gas where you can't use the restroom." Along with his brother Charles Evers, they led RCNL meetings where they both discussed equal rights to tens of thousands of people. After being involved in the RCNL, Medgar applies to the very segregated University of Mississippi, where his application was rejected. This rejection was because of his skin color and not his mind. After this unfair judgment, Evers became the focus of an NAACP campaign to desegregate that school. The case was brought up to the Supreme Court, where they ruled in favor of Evers in the Brown v. Board of Education case. That year, he became the NAACP's first field officer in Mississippi, where he helped fight for social justice for all Americans through campaigns and protests. Weeks before his death, Evers found himself as a huge target for white supremacists. Threats that ranged from Molotov cocktails thrown at his windows to almost being run over by a car were made constantly. In the first week of June, civil rights demonstrations in Mississippi grew in numbers due to Evers. He was one of the leaders of the Jackson movement, which tried to give equal rights to Black Americans. Evers was promised a speech on this movement days before he was assassinated. On June 1963, Medgar Evers was shot and killed hours after President John F. Kennedy's speech to support civil rights. Byron de la Beckwith, a member of the White Citizens Council and the Ku Klux Klan, was arrested on June 23rd for the murder. Late into the year of Evers' death, an all-white jury allowed Beckwith to escape justice multiple times in court. 30 years later, Beckwith was tried again and was convicted for murder. Despite his short life, Medgar Evers achieved many great things regarding civil rights. In 1952 to 1954, he and his brother Charles drew tens of thousands of people to meetings to discuss equal rights. This alone helped change the outlook of segregation all over Mississippi. Evers started many boycotts, marches, and speeches which helped raise awareness to the topic of equal rights. In 1954, Evers won a case against the Board of Education in the Supreme Court regarding whether segregation was unconstitutional. Being a member of the NAACP helped bring attention to segregation and how serious it was. These achievements Evers has accomplished helped greatly in the elimination of inequality in Mississippi.